Hi, everyone. I'm Kurt Roney, the instructor for this course, Business 410, Business Policy and Strategy, which is really the old-fashioned name for courses that now are called simply Business Strategy or Strategic Management. So this is a course in Strategic Management. And in this video, I'll acquaint you with the course, the various topics that we'll be covering in the course, the sequence of activities that we'll be going through, a project that you and your teammates will do at the end of the course, and how your grade will be calculated. So by the end of this video, you should have a pretty good idea of what we're going to do in the course and the sequence of activities that we'll be stepping through as we go through the course. But what I'm going to do is show you a series of PowerPoint slides that will summarize this material for you. And the PowerPoint slides that I use have been posted in the Moodle shell. So you can either get them out now and follow along with me, or print them off later so that you will have a game plan for how we're going to do the course. One thing that I have to acknowledge right off before we even get started is that as I'm making this recording, and as we get ready to start this new semester, we are in the middle of a coronavirus pandemic, and a great many changes have had to be made and are still being made in scheduling and the way in which courses are being conducted here at the university. Because of that, it may be that some of the material that I cover in this briefing will have to be changed later on just because of the times that we're in. Nevertheless, I think this briefing should give you a pretty good idea of what to expect. So with that, let me see if I can get the PowerPoint slides up here. We've got a bunch of new features here on Moodle, and I may have just a little bit of difficulty. There we go. We've got them up. So here we go with a summary, a little briefing of what to expect in this course. That's assuming I can advance the slides. And there we go. So the course, as I mentioned a minute ago, is about a topic in management which we call strategic management. And there's a process that we go through to do strategic management. And this is the process that is used by industrial corporations in the United States and Europe, and increasingly even in China. China's beginning to catch on. This is a fairly universally followed procedure that I'm going to acquaint you with in this course. So having had the course, you ought to be prepared to participate in strategic management procedures in the company that you go to work for. And that should make you a more valuable employee. So these elements of strategic management include taking a look at the external environment, the economy, markets, and industry, selecting goals and objectives based on what the company's capabilities are to function in that external environment, having analyzed what's out there in the environment and what the company's capabilities are. And once objectives and goals have been set, to form strategies to accomplish those goals and objectives. Goals are broader, larger endpoints of the strategy. Objectives are more specific elements related to functional areas such as manufacturing, marketing, and so forth. And finally, we'll talk a little bit about how to implement strategies, some of the approaches that can be taken to implement, make strategy happen. This is an excerpt from the syllabus. It's extremely important. I'm going to read it for you, even though that's not the best thing to do. But it's the words here should be found in your syllabus, but they basically summarize the essence of the course. This course concentrates on the managerial tasks of crafting and implementing comprehensive strategies and plans for achieving sustained competitive advantage. That is to say, over a long term. A fundamental theme of the course is that firms are most likely to achieve sustained success if their managers have sound strategic plans. You're going to learn how to do that in this course. It's both a skills course and a big picture course that integrates knowledge gained from prior business courses, your prior business courses in marketing and finance and so forth. It will sharpen your ability to think strategically by assessing and matching internal competences to opportunities and problems in the external business environment. You'll also learn how to select goals, develop strategic objectives, and form strategies to achieve those objectives. Thus, the course integrates perspectives of the chief executive, taking a look at the corporation from the whole, from the putting all the pieces together, as well as senior management and the entire management structure. So that, in essence, is what this course is about. There are two slides here that will tell you a little bit about me and my qualifications to teach the course. Among other things, I was vice president for corporate planning and development at Phillips Industries, and I also was director of corporate planning at Holiday Inn. I was a managing partner for almost 20 years at a strategic management consulting firm in Ohio. And I was also a senior management consultant at Peat Marwick Mitchell and Company, which now is called KPMG, which is a very large accounting firm. Along the way, I was also an internal consultant of PepsiCo, the company that makes Pepsi-Cola and Frito-Lay snack foods, to do this kind of work. This was earlier in my career. As an academician, while I was still in industry, I was an adjunct professor at the graduate program of Antioch University in Ohio in its graduate management program. When I retired, I went to North Carolina Wesleyan as an associate professor of management. And then over a dozen years ago, I came here to Mount Olive, where I'm now a professor of management. And my responsibility is for courses in strategic management, as well as international management, because I've done a lot of work to do strategic management in multiple countries. Okay, so the objectives of the course you see here on the screen. It's to acquaint you with this whole process of strategic management, how to assess the competitive capabilities of a firm, how to assess that external environment, the economy, market, and industry that I mentioned earlier. And having done so, to select the firm's mission, its goals, that is, its long-term end results that the management seeks, and the objectives of the strategy that will be implemented to pursue those goals. So one of the things we have to do is learn how to form strategy to achieve goals and objectives. And then, as I mentioned earlier, talk about how to not just implement strategy, but keep strategy up to date. Strategic management doesn't happen just one time. We don't just prepare a plan once, but that plan is a living document. It evolves because management's strategy evolves over time as business conditions and the firm's capabilities change. And so we need to be able to keep the plan up to date and, of course, monitor the company's progress in pursuit of objectives and take corrective action as needed. And we call those steps controls. So this is the scope of the course and the objectives. And that is my telephone ringing, and I hope it'll stop pretty soon. More specifically, these are the objectives of the course. For you to acquire essential strategic management skills, to gain an appreciation of distinctive competence that is required to achieve sustainable competitive advantage. Firms succeed in competition because they're able to perform their mission, to do what they do better than other firms that want to perform the same mission. When a firm is able to do things better than its competitors, it has distinctive competence. We want you to appreciate differences in strategic planning, not just for a single business, but for a corporation that has within it several businesses, because many large corporations do. So there's one approach to planning for a single business. There's another approach to planning for a corporation that owns several businesses. There's a portfolio of businesses then that has to be managed, while each one of those businesses also has to be planned and well managed. Okay. Again, we want you to learn the techniques for forming goals, objectives, and strategy. Become aware of implementation and the tools to implement strategy. To appreciate the dynamic nature of strategy and the need to continuously replan, as I mentioned earlier. And then to just think about all this from the perspectives of top management, because top management's responsibility is to see that strategic management gets done. This is big picture stuff as well as specific methods for conducting planning and the analytic work that goes into it. So at one extreme, we look at the details and how to do the work of planning. At the other extreme, we have to appreciate that the planning, the ultimate goals and objectives, the large, the scope of strategy is the responsibility of top corporate management. So you need to be able to appreciate the strategic management from both of those perspectives, from both of those extremes. Okay, so this is a capstone course. Pardon me when I take a drink now and then. My throat gets a little raw once in a while. So I'm a coffee addict. If you join me in a classroom you will find out that I always have my coffee with me. In any event, this is a capstone course, which means that among teaching you the specifics of strategic management methodology, it brings into play all the other disciplines that you've learned in your previous business courses. So there's some accounting here, there's some finance here, there's some marketing here, there's some economics, there's operations. So this course tries to bring it all together. And one way that we do that is by conducting a project at the end of the course. And teams are formed to conduct these projects. That means that you will need to join a team and share the responsibility for doing the work of that team to assess a corporation. And I'll be talking about that a little bit later in this briefing, and I'll run through with you the various steps of that project. But you know, in a biology course, I guess, or a chemistry course, you would study the periodic table, you would study the theory of chemical reactions, and then go into the lab and you know, try it out, and maybe blow something up. Well, in this course, it's also a lab course. We don't blow up companies, but we try out these methods to see how we can, instead of blowing things up, put a company together, kind of like the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. The course is laid out pretty completely. If you see the Moodle shell, that's already got most of the course elements in it. But as this slide mentions, and as I mentioned earlier, simply because of all the changes that are going on, it's very possible that the sequence of activities or even the scope of the course will change. I try not to allow things to change too much, but it can certainly happen. It's an intense course. There's a lot in the course, and you're going to have to provide enough time to do the readings, take the quizzes and tests, and work with your team on that project. You can't do the project in the last week or two. You have to work on the project throughout the course. And so at the very beginning of the course, we'll form teams and select companies, a company for each team to study, so that the team can get to work right away on gathering the information about the company, about its external environment. And then as we go through the steps of strategic management in the course, you can apply those steps to the company you're studying. Okay, so here's a little bit more detail about what's in the course. There will be lectures. There are 4 of them, in fact. And the first lecture you're attending right now, the course introduction, but then there will be lectures on the scope of strategic management in more detail, methods for gathering evidence to make strategic decisions, evidence about the external environment, evidence about internal capabilities, a lecture on how to make strategic decisions regarding goals and strategy, and a lecture on implementing strategy. So those lectures will supplement a fairly digestible textbook. It's a brand new textbook, but it's not a large textbook. It's only got 10 chapters. By way of comparison, my course in international business uses a textbook with 17 chapters. So this is relatively a fairly small book. So there will be quizzes on those 4 lectures and 10 chapters. There also will be some occasional topical readings. They'll probably come near the end of the course, but I think that you and I both want to have an opportunity to talk about what the coronavirus, or so-called COVID, what its impacts have had on strategic management, on markets and economies, and on companies' abilities to implement strategy. Everything has changed. So what we're going to study using this textbook, the textbook was written before the coronavirus occurred, and everything has been sort of thrown up in the air. So we're going to go through the conventional methods and theories of strategic management, but you and I both know that a whole lot has changed just since March of this year. And so we need to talk about that. And I've selected a couple small readings that address the problems that we find as a result of the coronavirus. And I think, you would appreciate that. Certainly the companies that you might go to work for are wrestling with those kinds of problems. Then you will do your corporate strategy case with your teammates. There's a lot of work here. At the end of the course, you and your teammates will present your case. And there's quite a bit in the outline and the scope of these cases, and I will give you an outline. As a matter of fact, there's an outline already on your Moodle shell that explains the scope of these presentations. But the bottom line is this: when you present this, the results of your work, it's going to take you an entire class period. That is almost an hour and a half for you and your teammates to present all of this work that you do. So this is a major undertaking. Okay, and after the presentation, I will ask a question to the class about some part of what you present. And the question can be answered fairly briefly. But it's in this slide, it's called a strategic issue discussion paper. And it's meant to bring out 1 or 2 critical elements of the case that you study. There will be 3 tests. You can see them here on the slide. The first one is about the general processes of strategic management and gathering evidence. The second is about making strategic decisions, and yes, the third is about implementing strategy. Then there's a final exam, and the final exam will be based on the principles of strategic management that are demonstrated by your case and the cases that are presented by other teams. So good idea to attend each of these presentations and take notes because the final exam will be based on them. Okay, so this is generally what's required to complete the course successfully. 14 quizzes, as well as perhaps a couple of quizzes on those supplemental readings, 3 tests, presentation, those discussion questions, and the final exam. That's a lot. Here's how the points for your grade will be accumulated. The 3 or the quizzes all told will account for 15 of 100 points. I wish it could be less. Quizzes are not meant to test your knowledge. Quizzes are meant to be learning aids. Based on the quiz, you should be able to look at your results find out what you did not get right, go back and review it, and then when we have a test, get it right. So if I had my way, there'd be no points there. The problem is that if there were no points for the quizzes, you wouldn't take them. So I want you to take them because it's a learning device. So there are 15 points there. That's enough to make a difference and to give you a motive to take the quizzes and do well on them and try to do well on them. And then by reviewing what you didn't get right, you should be able to do well on the tests. Let's assume that you got a B minus average on your quizzes. That would be 80%. Now, most of you will do better than that. But if you got an average of 80 on those 15 points, what would that get you? 12 points, right? And that would mean that you lost only 3 points for taking those quizzes. And that you could still get a 97 in the course. So, you know, by learning from the quizzes, you should have a better shot at getting a really high grade in the course. The 3 tests will be worth 40 points. You can see that last, if you remember, there are only 2 chapters on implementation and a lecture. It's just less material, so only 10 points for it, 15 for each of the other 2. The team presentation, 15 points, but then the case discussion question, another 10. So now we're up to 25. And don't forget that the final exam is also based on those cases. So you've essentially got 40 points based upon application of principles. And you've got 55 on theory, that is the quizzes and the tests. That brings us to 95. At the end of this course, you are obliged to take a Peregrine outbound exam test. I have nothing to say about that. This is a requirement of the Tillman School of Business. In order to complete the course, you must take the test. And not only that, you've got to buy it. The cheapest way to do it is to buy it online from Peregrine, although you can get it from the university bookstore, where it will cost you more because a bookstore needs to make a profit. So your smart move is to order it directly from Peregrine. And the purpose of this outbound exam is to compare our university students or our business school students to business school students in other universities. And by comparing how well we do to how well other students do, our faculty get some input as to how we should be improving our courses and upgrading them and so forth. By the way, it's very difficult not to get all 5 points in that Peregrine exam. I think it only requires a grade of, don't hold me to this, but 70 to get all 5 points. So basically for taking the course, taking the test, you get the points. But it is scaled. I think if you get a low enough grade, you won't get any points, but you know, I mean, it's really, I guess if you got a 60, you'd get 4 points. The idea is that if you just take this test, attempt to do well, you ought to get almost all of those 5 points. For what it's worth, I wish we didn't have it here because this Peregrine test isn't related to strategic management. And therefore, I wish the university or the business school would conduct it some other way. But since this is one of the last courses you take in your business curriculum, you and I are stuck with this. There's nothing we can do about it. So please don't forget to take it, and I will be reminding you. Okay, the case. the strategic management case. In a moment, I'll show you a list of alternative cases that you can choose from. Normally, teams have 3, perhaps 4 team members, depending upon the size of the class. So it may be that we'll have 4 members per team in this class. I'm not sure. But you might want to, if you know other members of the class already, you might just get in touch with each other, and you'll see why in a minute. But as I said, I'm going to show you a list of alternative cases to choose from in a minute. And as soon as you and your teammates know which case you'd like to study, you can get in contact me by email. First come, first serve. So if you're the first team to request a case or a company to study, you will get it. If the next team to contact me requests the same company, they won't get it, but they'll get their second choice. And so each team, when they make a request, needs to make a request for 3 companies in order of preference, so that I'll be able, so that you will be sure to get one of the companies that you want to study. So we'll select a company, you and your teammates will. They'll be presented. And then, as I mentioned, I'll ask a little question about something in that case, and a short essay will be expected from each member of the class, even the members of your team. But it won't take you long to do that little paper. And then, as I said, the final exam will be based on all of the cases. So here are the alternative cases that are available. There are 10 of them, and so you can see there's quite a selection. There are industrial cases. There are such as Boeing and Caterpillar and Deere. There are consumer products cases, Pfizer, Walgreens, PepsiCo, and another industrial case is FedEx. It's a services company. And of course, then you've got 3 different automotive companies. And sometimes we have a couple teams that each take a different auto company. I'm going to try to limit that if I can, because I'd like to see one group do an industrial company, one group do a consumer company, one do an auto company, and perhaps somebody do FedEx for services. So when you make your selection and contact me, please try to choose one industrial, one consumer, one auto company. And if you want FedEx, choose it as your first, second, or third, or fourth choice. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to run through what will take place in the course itself. So the first part of the course is about the company and its environment. There will be a couple lectures on the introduction to and the scope of strategic management. Another very long lecture, frankly, it's divided into 2 parts, on gathering evidence about the external environment that we can't control, the economy, the markets that your company serves, and the industry that your company is a part of. We look at economy, markets, and industry separately, and we've got specific skills and techniques for doing so. The second part of the evidence that we gather is about a firm's capabilities, its resources, its organizational structure, its performance trends, and so forth. The evidence that we have to look at is about what's outside the company and cannot be controlled, and what's inside the company in terms of resources and capabilities that can be controlled. And the essence of strategy is try to make use of what we can control to deal most successfully, most productively with outside. And so getting that fit between capabilities and the external environment is a very important requirement, a very important element of strategy. Okay, so then we have 4 chapters in this first part. The first chapter in the textbook is just covers everything. It's intended to give you a bird's eye view of strategic management in its entirety. It's an overview. The second chapter is more specifics on just how strategy is formed and implemented. The third chapter then is about analyzing the company's industry. And the fourth chapter is about analyzing the company's capabilities and its resources. Notice that what's not in chapter 3 is the economy or the market. And most textbooks don't do a real good job in providing techniques for gathering evidence with which to make strategic decisions. And that's why lecture 2 is in this course. And maybe that's something that I might mention to you. If you recall earlier, I mentioned that I've been both a strategic planning executive and an academic. I've written about strategic management theory and methodology, and I've also practiced it for decades. So in this course, I hope to be able to provide you a little more than you can get just by reading a textbook, but instead give you some insight into how strategic management actually is conducted in real companies. Okay, the second part is about making strategic decisions. And again, there's a lecture about how we select goals, how we select strategic objectives, that is the objectives of strategy, and how strategy is formed. The textbook then will provide some more detail about the nature of strategy, the so-called generic strategies that all companies can use. Strategic moves, how strategy is positioned sequentially, and then some specific information in chapter 7 about international strategy, a topic that's dear to my heart since I've implemented strategy in other countries, and I teach a course in international business here at the university. And then diversification, how we plan for a portfolio of businesses in the same corporation, what the characteristics of successful plans for a diversified corporation are. So there's a test on these elements as well. And finally, the short part of the course on implementation. So again, I will offer you a lecture, both on implementation and something a little special, contingency planning, doing scenario planning, forming scenarios about alternative futures, what the future might be, what it might be like, and then preparing plans for those alternative futures so that the company is prepared no matter what, how the future unfolds. And then a couple of chapters on implementation. One, first of all, on ethics and corporate social responsibility. That's a short chapter, by the way. And then a longer chapter on implementation of strategy. And there the authors take a little different view than I do, so that between the lecture and this chapter, you get a pretty good background in the scope of implementation, scope of implementation and what's involved in implementing strategy. And there's a test. So after that's done, after we've gone through those 10 chapters and 4 lectures, it's time for us to reverse roles, and you will teach the course. So you, as we're going through the course, I want to meet with you and your teammates a couple of times to be sure you're on the right track. Also, I'm a retired consultant. I've made my living for over 4 decades by helping people do planning. And I want to help you too. So I'd like to join your team. I won't push myself on you, but I'm really available and willing to help you and your team know how to do the work of this project. And wherever you hit a snag, I'll try to help you get through it. You still have to do the work of the project, but I'm there to help you and coach you. And in some cases, a little more than that, because I want you to succeed. And I want you to have a good presentation because, I want these classes, when you conduct your presentations, to be good classes after all. And the way to do that is to have a good presentation. So I'm really here to help you during this part of the course. Okay, so as we get ready to do the presentation, we'll have to run through the various steps that are required to do the project, including some financial work. So one member of your team will be designated as the financial person. And that person will probably work with me a little more closely to be sure that you get the financials done properly. And there's a fair amount of financial work in the project. So a good idea is to be sure that you have somebody on your team who likes numbers and who can do financial work. That's the smart move. Okay, so we do the presentations. If there are 3 teams, there will be 3 different days. If there are 4 teams, they'll be done in 4 different days. After those presentations, time permitting, because again, we've got this alternative, this new schedule where we stop classes at Thanksgiving. The very last week when we do the review and have the final exam will be through Moodle online because the university will close at Thanksgiving. So hopefully we'll have that review in the first day that we're back online after Thanksgiving in order to review the principles of the course, prepare for the exam, and then the exam will be given online. Okay, a couple of suggestions to finish up here. A good idea is to get a loose leaf binder and to print off the PowerPoints from this presentation or from this briefing, as well as the PowerPoints that I put on Moodle for all of the lectures. I think I've also put PowerPoints on Moodle for every one of the chapters. So in order to prepare for the quizzes and the exams, if you have these PowerPoints printed off and put into a loose leaf book, you can use them to cram, to review. And my experience is that folks who do that get much better grades. So you have to invest $3 or $5, whatever it is, to get a loose leaf binder if you don't already have one, and the ink and the paper to print off the PowerPoints. But I think it's an investment that on which you will get a very good return. Another thing, please come to class having read the chapter for that day. We'll get a lot more done and you will benefit more. Now, frankly, I've done this long enough to know that there are a bunch of you who are not going to do this anyway. I'm going to ask you to read the chapter before class, and you won't. That means you won't get as much out of the class. You won't be as prepared to take the quiz. But the quizzes are going to be opened right after the class. You're going to have a certain amount of time to do them, and that's probably until the next class. And sometimes you've got other things going on in your life, and if you have to suddenly go home and read the chapter and then take the quiz, lo and behold, you don't get as many questions answered correctly. If you read the chapter before class, we can review the essential points. And then when you walk out of that class, go take the quiz, and the class will be like a review session, and you'll max the quiz and get a high grade. You don't mind a high grade, do you? Anyway, and then most importantly of all, get the basic information about your company. All these companies trade stock publicly, which means that you can go to the company and request their stockholder information, including the Form 10-K and annual report. Now, those items are available on the websites, but the Form 10-K is a big, long thing. And if you request a document, a Form 10-K document, and perhaps a prospectus, for the most recent annual meeting, and maybe the annual report. It's a lot easier to review these things if you can put them on your desk and flip the pages than going through them on a screen. At least that's my experience, and I encourage you to get these documents. And then to the extent that we've got videos on Moodle where I cover the lectures and the chapters, be sure to use them. You can look at them more than once to review if you care to, but they're there for you. So with that, I think we've pretty much finished the review. I am trying desperately to stop the recording here. And in any event, the briefing's over. Thanks for sitting through it for, I guess, just a couple minutes over an hour. But I hope it's been helpful to you. I hope you, if you don't enjoy the course, at least get a lot out of it. And I hope the course will help you prepare for your career. So with that, I'm going to try to turn this machine off and say goodbye.